We have finally made it into the game, guys. All the players are here. They are ready to go. They are playing their usual races. In the top left of a Cosmic Sapphire, it is the yellow Protoss, Trigger.
And his opponent, spawning down on the bottom right, it is the Italian Stallion from Kaitsa Gaming. Give it up for Reynor.
Yes.
One of the greatest players of all time. I think it's important to kickstart that discussion back up always. It's always something that ends well with no hurt feelings and no one getting upset. So this is as good a time as any.
Isn't it weird that people get upset about discussing who else is one of the best or one of the greatest? Like, if I was in the discussion, right? So I guess if this is a discussion about casters, and then it was is Zombie the best caster or is Wardy the best caster? Then maybe I would have some personal feelings attached. But isn't it amazing that people will be like, well, Mario's the best, no, Cyril's the best. And then they actually do get their feelings, I don't know, involved, really emotional. Sometimes I watch it happen, and I just think to myself, I don't want to be that emotional, but if I could have 10% of that emotion, maybe my life would be happier.
But would it though? Because imagine you're at a traffic light, and it's red.
Okay.
That just ruins your entire day if that's the kind of person that you are. You're just like, God damn, it's been 45 seconds and it won't change. Traffic lights are so imba.
It actually blindsided me. That was proper humor right there. I was like, okay, where's this going? Oh, it's just the red light. Yeah, that is pretty bad. Oh, boy. You're right. I don't want to be that emotional. God forbid. No. Emotions are terrible things.
Yeah, that's why I removed mine surgically when I was younger,
Did
Just
you?
No emotions whatsoever.
Do you plant it back in when you watch StarCraft, and that's why you get all excited and giddy? Because it's something that's not even in you usually?
Well, no, it's more like StarCraft's the only thing that can get me to experience real emotions. So I need to do this, it's medically required for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Otherwise I just bottle everything up forever and eventually I'll just explode.
Heard it here first. StarCraft is the only thing that gives steadfast life and emotions. Mm-hmm. So any girlfriend or wife you might have,
oh no.
Suck it. You don't
girlfriend or wife.
Yeah. Anyways, as per the usual, we do have a Stargate opener in PvZ. Now, the only thing I will say is a bit worthwhile noting is that this was a Stalker first, not an Adept first. So I do believe that when Hero does his opener, as we are talking still a lot about Hero, not because of the GSO finals necessarily, but because of Protoss versus Zerg, I do believe it is mostly Adept Stalker, Chrono or no, sometimes not. But this, just right off the bat, Stalker first. But still into Oracles and a third Nexus, so not hiding anything particularly weird. Not weird at all, actually.
No, and it's it's just, it kind of makes you question just a little bit. You're like, oh, is there something up? But ever since Stalker's got the buff, they 3-shot Lings. They're just good units, they're just decent, and you get the same number of units anyway, so it works out all right. And on a map like Cosmic Sapphire, where you've got the the 2-building wall at the front, Trigger's able to get away with a really, really quick third Nexus. And he is the kind of player that has always been pushing the limits of this. I actually saw him the other day against Rattata do a 1 gate, 1 Oracle, single unit third Nexus at 315 or 320. And I was just like, Trigger. Trigger. I'm a big Trigger fan, don't get me wrong. As a Canadian, I'm like, oh yeah, give me that Trigger, put it in my veins. But I was like, you're disappointed. Can't be that greedy, my dude. And he's actually going to scale it back a little bit here. Queens, though, almost getting an Oracle kill. That would have been pretty huge.
Yeah, that would have been nasty. Yeah, I think it is the North American Protosses, because I feel like Estrella is the other one that does really absurdly greedy openers every now and again. It's like, okay, You sure? All right, I guess it worked out. I can see doing any type of greedy opener, so both in the Adept not coming out to get that kind of secondary scout, probe, Adept, Oracle is how they do the scouting usually, on one of the biggest maps. I can kind of see getting like away with that, and certainly Reynor was not doing any type of Ling all-in, so that's fine. But then also a faster third Nexus. As you're pointing out, you don't need to add that second gateway for any type of additional walling when you have the natural wall being 2 buildings big. We are going into Blink. I was a little... I did wonder for a second it might be Resonant Glades because we had only a Twilight Council for the longest time, but nope. And no third Oracle either, so we're not really into full-on 100% copying hero, you know, the whole way through. Now, we do have a slightly later Forge. It is still going to start up +1 and just the 2 Oracles. Things are moving along smoothly as Reynor continues to spread this creep. He does have +1 melee finishing, and those queens, I don't think they're actually going to be pulled to try and do an attack. It looks like they are ready and willing to engage if they think they should.
Yeah, that was... for a second, I was like, hello? I think until he saw the Stalkers, and he was like, okay, you actually have units. Like, I'm not going to do this. That was looking a little bit bold. A couple of weird things, by the way, from Trigger so far. He's added on a 5th gas, and he never killed the Overlord in the natural with the Oracle providing high ground vision. So just a couple of things that are like kind of... One of them, like, a strange decision. The other one, well, I guess they're both strange decisions. But we've got the, fight kind of kicking off here. Creep spread is already very nice, though, from Reynor. And he's actually kind of reinforcing it a little bit with active tumors. The Revelation doesn't get all the active tumors that Reynor put down. Look at this. He preemptively replaced the creep. That's really, really clever from Reynor.
Trigger is going for a very fast follow-up, I guess is kind of what you would call this. Basically, it's kind of more continuing the aggression, right? Less so a follow-up, but choosing to go for this forward gateway as opposed to, a 4th base, or actually getting a robo that is going to streamline his attack so that it can start a bit earlier, but then actually also still have a lot of potential right now as I'm speaking, and of course even more when that proxy gateway finishes up. Now, it's kind of a funny proxy gateway because it's not that far away from the 3rd Nexus, but nonetheless, it is closer, and it is going to be a lot of Stalkers. Hitting with +1 as well, that finally finished up. Reynor, he's got a couple of Ravagers to help out, and the Lings are actually going to go for the back attack, clean up some of those reinforcing units, and go for the pylons as well. Getting both of them is very nice. And any loss of momentum with this style of play is huge. The Protoss has a very difficult time getting it back.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. Finally, those creep tumors are going to get cleaned up, so that'll make things a little bit easier. Nice job from Trigger. Spots these morphing in Banelings. I was going to say, there's a lot of aggressive potential right here for Trigger. He's, he by no means is he close to breaking through yet, but there is very, very strong potential with this push. As he warps in another few Stalkers, he actually takes the army supply lead, and this position that he's pushing from is very scary for Reynor.
It's very seesaw, isn't it? So at first, You're like, well, that's a decent amount of stuff for the Zerg player. This can't be that bad, but Stalkers... they're basically meant to survive forever. You blink back the weak ones, they regen the shields, and then you're still attacking nonstop when you have that many Stalkers. But 15 probes just went down to the Banelings that initially Trigger was aware of, pushed them away, but Reynor did not let that go. And that is a mighty punch to Trigger's economy, but he still has all of this army on the front lines.
That he does, and like you said, there's kind of a critical mass that you can hit with Blink Stalkers, where if the Zerg player can't shut it down, can't wrap around on it, can't maybe lock it down with fungal growths or something like that, or get just an overwhelming number of units, that you just continue to trade as the Protoss. And even with the loss of those probes, he's still on 57 workers. I'm starting to get a little bit scared here for Reynor. He does have +2 melee, +1 carapace, but that means no upgrades for attack on the Roaches and Ravagers. And the Lings, at this point, the Stalker numbers are too high for the Lings to get that wraparound.
They'd have to be a lot of Lings, like 60 of them, trying to go for a wraparound, which might still be worth it if you thought that it was the case, but it's also very larva intensive, and so many of these queens not going for the injects. Larva is absolutely a problem right now for Reynor as he decides to go for the bust, tries to push out of it, basically his own choke that Trigger was abusing. He does manage to send Trigger back for just a hot second, but it's never really, if you push them back entirely, if you push them all the way back to their 3rd base, then that might be enough from the Zerg side to take quite a few breaths but taking one almost half breath before the Protoss comes back on the front lines, that is when the Zerg kind of dies a lot of the time. So Reynor still being alive, that's great. He's still holding on here, but all it takes is one over dedication, thinking that you've done it, and then Trigger's just right back on it. Maybe he comes with charge lots next time, and then Reynor is suddenly very sad about his position. But he is holding on for now, and he even is adding on 2 more upgrades while getting some more probe damage done.
Yeah, this probe damage is really, really great out of Reynor. We've got the picture-in-picture showing those probes. Oh, they're going to get hit from 2 sides. Another 22 workers going down. God damn. If it wasn't for this worker damage, I think Trigger might have already run away with the game. Like, we're really close to that point as it is. We are going to see an attempted wraparound coming on in, but Trigger is going to blink out of there. Unfortunately, he has to blink onto creep. Oh, these oracles in the bottom side. They will actually get 2 queens, surprisingly, but they're not being microed, so they are going to go down. However, a huge concave of stalkers. Corrosive Biles are going to force him back. Good job.
Yeah, that was kind of scary. The Roach they were really overreaching. They were overroaching.
Overroaching.
But then Trigger was unable to capitalize, and I think losing those 2 oracles like that, not actually worth it. 2 queens in the grand scheme of things, not going to be super impactful, but a lack of revelation, that is impactful. Cleaning up that middle, cleaning up the left, or even just further stasis traps, and especially defensive stasis traps, ones that your stalkers retreat back to, are actually so damn useful. So now they're completely gone. Trigger's about to lose his 4th Nexus entirely. I mean, it's a very dedicated build to begin with, I feel like, or maybe not dedicated to the right word. It's only so dedicated because he's lost so many freaking probes, but it is always on a knife's edge. It's that seesaw, and I think right now Reynor he's winning, man. He is actually pushing everything back. He's gotten to a critical mass of Roach Ravager. He continues to do damage, Lings in the natural and the main base. I think Trigger's out of steam.
He is, and it could not have come soon enough for Reynor because the pressure was really, really mounting on him. These counterattacks from Reynor have been everything, and they are really what is winning him this game. Trigger's still trying to make it happen with the Blink Stalkers, but we can see at this point, he's blinking large numbers of them back, which is not what you need. There is still a massive army, and these are +2 Blink Stalkers. If you look at the army value, he's way ahead, but he needs to be perfectly microing this in order to still have a chance here.
And I don't think that's going to happen. As much as Trigger can micro those Stalkers, they also need to be in just a good position. And sometimes abusing the choke can work out. The Lings kind of filter in, the Roaches go a little too far forward. Boom, you got even a concave on the other side of things, but pushing through a choke is difficult for both sides. So there's always a little bit more room that Reynor can run back to, and then all the Stalkers are not shooting. So you see about half of them, in fact, kind of just running around each other. That's something that Reynor is going to hope continues to make Trigger's army a little less effective so that his Roach Ravager army now with 1-2 on the Roach Ravager, now with Fungals as well, is going to be able to lock down this Stalker army and send Trigger packing into game 2. I think momentum, it looks so cool. It looks so promising. But Roach Ravager is going to be able to stick it out a little bit longer. And those Fungals are always going to be there.
I mean, if we look at the unit count right now, there's not a lot of Roaches and Ravagers. It's only 7 Roaches, 12 Ravagers, and there's 27 Blink Stalkers on the field. This is not over yet, despite everything.
Yeah, Larva's actually another issue again. So, I mean, Reynor right now, Shroud is building Queens. So literally anything to help just body block a little bit for the Ravagers, so they're not, getting sniped down here, would be brilliant. But 800 minerals, that could be so many Lings, or even a handful more Queens. There we go, finally pops a huge number more Roaches, but even Trigger realizes that he's not quite going to do enough, and he does tap out.
That, even at the very end, that was way closer than it had any business being. I feel like, obviously, Reynor takes the game, but I feel like he might be sweating a little bit after that one. That was very, very close. Even like right up to the last 10 seconds, Trigger blinked back like 75% of his army all at once. If he's continuously blinking back just individually, Stalkers individually perfectly, there's a small chance that he can still snowball from that point. Like, it is, you pointed it out a few times and you were very correct about it. The larva issues really reared their head, and that is because Trigger forced those Queens to stay at the front. I'm really impressed with how Trigger played that, even though Reynor was able to take it down, and those counterattacks were absolutely killer instinct perfect.
There's more than a couple things. I'd say there's 4 or 5 things that could have gone slightly differently for Trigger to
Yeah.
actually win that game. First one I can think of is the pylons. If the both pylons had not been killed to cause a temporary power outage on the reinforcements, that might have snowballed just enough. If the oracles had maybe been used more with stasis traps to help blink back to maybe a couple of more roach ravager, units get stuck in there, that could have been big. Or even, the occasional, more than occasional actually, Zerg players bringing forward the roach ravager ling army without the queens, the oracles get that free damage done. That can even be a huge contribution. And then there's so many other battles where it was so close. If there was a little bit more of a concave, if Reynor was a little bit worse about his army control, all those types of things, you can see that it was insanely close. It was very, very close. More so than I think people would expect when they looked at the names to begin with. Trigger versus Reynor, right? You think Reynor's going to win, no problem. But this new style, I think that Zerg players are ultimately still going to be getting used to it. And I also think that it's not a style with a super simple answer. There's still a lot of mechanics that go into it.
Yeah, it's so Razor's Edge. It's so Razor's Edge, and you're right. Like, just a couple of things, like even one of the things you mentioned, I think going differently is very, very. It's impactful. Very Razor's Edge. Yeah, very impactful. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just like rewatching the fight and being like, man. Like, if just a couple of blinks a little bit more cleanly, a couple things going a little bit differently, and I think even with all of the counterattack damage, there's a really good chance. Even at the very end, like if the units don't get through that wall, no, Reynor, that one big blink really was like the last chance for Trigger, and blinking back like 20 stalkers all at once when you're trying to snowball and you're so close to just running out of steam. Yeah. That's like that's like the door closing the last little crack,
It can be a real momentum breaker. And it feels like this is so much about keeping constant pressure, which doesn't necessarily mean that I guess you're like, full of momentum, but it does mean that you're front lines. Once you blink everything back, obviously that's not the case anymore. So yeah, that could have been different. And so many run bys could potentially have not done as much damage as they did. All things considered, Trigger played a really well-played game. The Stalker micro, the constant pressure, the build order, I think was rather tight. And even with all of those losses, he managed to keep a cool head and then also not overly panic with those losses too, which I think is actually a very good sign for Trigger as a growing player. But beating this guy is quite the challenge. Let's introduce the players, and we're in the bottom left. So let's do that first. Bottom left, down 1, he is Trigger.
And his opponent, with devastating counterattacks, spawning up at the top right for Kites of Gaming, it is Reynor. In the purple. What do you think about purple and yellow? I really like the aesthetic. It matches with the TSL9 logo. I think it's just... Because I've never actually seen this combination, except maybe like Riser versus Nina or something. Because Riser plays purple and Nina always picks yellow. I really like the way that they like look together in contrast with one another. I think it's really pretty.
Apparently, it is totally colorblind safe. So
yes,
I guess this is the most important thing. Actually, a lot of people might be very appreciative of it. I wonder if it could be, because apparently red-blue is not great, right? And like red-green also isn't great or something like that. So, and that's what the tournaments always choose, because that's the lighting that they choose to like go on the players, to put on the player booths or the background lighting, right? I wonder if yellow and purple just look really ugly in offline settings. I'll just be like, nope, we're never doing this. Suck it, blind people, or not blind people, colorblind people. Both are bad. You shouldn't say suck it to either one, but yeah, I know that is a somewhat constant complaint.
Yes, yeah, no, it's one of the most famous players was actually featured in the little, I guess, trivia on the side, was Rhett. He was a famously colorblind player, and I believe he played with like an orange and blue offset. Like they weren't like the normal orange and blue that we're used to, but like that's what it kind of came down to, or at least how I saw it. And that's another cool thing is that, everyone sees the world differently. Yanni and Laurel, what is it? The blue, what was it? The white and gold dress versus the blue and purple dress?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still feel like we're being gaslit by the whole world. I don't know.
Well, what did you think it was? What side were you on?
I don't remember.
See, I don't remember either. But I feel like if we both said the opposite thing, we'd be at each other's throats right now.
Oh yeah,
You're
that's
insane.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Oh, it's ridiculous. No, because like once you perceive things a certain way, nothing else makes sense to you, especially when it's such different contrasting colors. And that's kind of what I'm getting at is, we're all different out there. And so, yeah, it's important to be respectful of one another, even if they're wrong.
Yeah. That's a brilliant thing to end on. It's good life value.
Right.
So, what is happening in this game, Steadfast? We got Oracle opener again.
We sure do. I was speaking about Trigger kind of cutting corners a little bit. Reynor, he's not really doing it against Reynor here. He's not getting his 333rd Nexus. He didn't do on Cosmic Sapphire. He didn't go for the, super, super fast setup right there with the 320 Nexus. He's playing as a normal quote unquote Protoss would play. He's playing very, I would say stock standard, but we do have Reynor going for a pretty decent number of lings here. It's not a crazy amount, but it's enough to try and put some pressure on, maybe pick off probes that are transferring to the third, maybe try and get some pickoffs from Trigger kind of out of position with a couple of his units. Yeah, we'll see if he can get something.
It doesn't look too promising.
Ooh, nice readjustment right there to make sure only one Zergling can get in. But Reynor doing some nice micro. He's clicking past to make sure he occupies two spaces at once. He's going to break through here. Oh, that's pretty nice. Well, he's still going to get the full scout. Gets one probe, gets a couple of pickoffs. That's not bad.
It's not bad. It's quite the chaos maker, which is very annoying. Very annoying indeed. But not enough lings to actually cause a lot of problems. And certainly not enough to actually go after that third Nexus, which I don't think would have been successful anyways. The Oracles probably would return home fast enough as it was a rather healthy Nexus. But it is going to be 3 Oracles on the point of the Stargate units, so a little more of what we're expecting, I suppose. And there could be even more depending on how this game actually pans out. But Twilight Council Forge and Robo all coming down at the same time really does point this towards a more macro, I guess, situation. So 4 bases is what I expect here, where that last game really trying to streamline it so that the +1 hits with the kind of major attack, if you will, and with the proxy gateway being thrown down instead of the Robo, kind of interfering with a very clean build order. But I guess one thing that had not started yet was a Twilight Council upgrade. So I did presume to be Blink. No, it is actually going to be Charge. So a lot of the, I guess, not hero Protoss is basically still adding in Charge Archon, kind of the pre-Void Ray meta, back into the fold.
Yeah, and it's still a really strong way to play if your opponent doesn't build a Roach Warren, like we saw Ragnarok not doing. You can get caught out. Speaking of getting caught out, nice job with these links. Oh, can he get the full wraparound? Does get at least... Oh, no, he's going to get, all 3 units, I think. Stalker at both Adepts. Nice little trade right there for Reynor. Just, it's not huge in the, overall outcome of the game, but it's nice pickoffs, and it's kind of annoying for Trigger. Meanwhile, a couple drones going down on the other side of the map. Once again, pretty small potatoes, but it's nice to even that out. Mm-hmm. I will say that this is very different from what Zaun did versus Ragnarok. Zaun did a very dedicated push. I think Trigger's going to try and get up to a very quick 4 bases, go for right into Carrier Storm. He did this versus Rattata the other day, and he had a pretty solid defense. Data C, if you wall off a couple of the, if you wall off around this 4th base, you wall off that 3rd on the top side, which he's already done, you can create a situation where there's only one attack path.
Right. That has been, I think, a really good development from the new maps, is the way that Protoss can SimCity themselves. Now, Zerg players, I think, have been doing better just, with natural time going on, not being the first week of the new maps, right? They've been getting better at almost adjusting to it. Oh, wow, Swarm hosts are on the way.
Yeah.
That is interesting. But like on this map, for instance, with Trigger taking the gateways to the top side, now he can't go to that top side. Although the way that he did it, he actually can still go through the top. But anyways, other Protosses might fully wall off that top, and then the Zerg player takes their 4th or even their 5th to the top side, either one. And the Protoss don't have a direct line of attack there. But yeah, I think what's more interesting to talk about is the Swarm Hosts. Going into Roach Swarm Hosts. So I talked about Protoss bringing back some of the older metas. Here you go. Now Zerg is as well.
Now this is really important. I believe those Oracles saw the Swarm Host, and he starts up a couple of cannons. And that's a really big deal, because if the Swarm Hosts show up with the Locust, that can be really big. But now he's got Storm done. He can storm down this wave of Locusts. This looks like it's got pretty decent potential, although the target fire on the High Templar, he gets 2 of them right away. Oh, that's not what you want as Trigger. He needed to be a little bit more on top of that, and also protecting those High Templar better.
Yeah, 3 High Templar going down. Pretty nasty stuff. I mean, otherwise, it was probably an okay engagement, but yeah, it is very scary. Supplies aren't even maybe the most, like, the scariest thing here. We know how inflated Roach Swarm Host can get, but the next wave is really, I think, going to determine whether Trigger actually has a handle on things, or is truly starting to lose his footing because he just lost a bunch of those storms. Stasis Trap does help in the 4th, and this little squad of units will take care of Roach Ravager rather easily, but here come the Locusts.
Does he have a battery overcharge available? No, it's on cooldown for another 10-15 seconds or so. The Swarm Host, the Locust kind of coming in separately, and the Immortals, oh, is it going to be enough? He needs that overcharge so badly. It's just off cooldown now, but both Immortals go down literally 2 seconds before the battery overcharge was available. We will see the Zealots able to deal with these Roaches, but he really needed to keep those 2 Immortals alive desperately to keep from this snowballing, I feel like.
Right. Yeah, as I said, the second Swarm Host wave, I think, was going to be the real test, and I think Trigger has, unfortunately, maybe officially failed. You know, maybe if the teacher really likes him, it's like a D, right? The teacher doesn't really like him right now, so it's a fail. And that's just unfortunate, because it's not necessarily the most dramatic of games either. Trigger is still on 4 bases. Oh, never mind. Their base actually just got killed. So he's still on 3 bases, but his army should never really get to a point of competition. It's always going to be up against those Swarm Host Locusts, getting picked off, and then the Roach Queen. It doesn't look that intimidating. We can see right now how intimidating is this. Not that intimidating, but you always know there's a Locust Wave behind it, and you're still not gathering a good number of Protoss units.
No, it's nice micro so far from Trigger, but he's down 100 supply. And we're just, we're going to see that death animation coming on in. Shiji gets called. Reynor takes the game and the series 2-0.